I didn't wake up one day and decide I wanted balance. I didn't sit down and say, I want a little bit of basketball, a little bit of comfort, a little bit of sleep, a little bit of fun. That's not how it works. Because balance is a luxury. For people who aren't trying to be great, I chose this. I chose the early mornings, when the gym was empty and the lights were still warming up. I chose to be alone with my thoughts, alone with the sound of the ball hitting the floor, alone with the question most people run from. How bad do you really want it? People love to talk about passion. They love to post quotes. They love the highlights. But passion doesn't show up at 4 a.m. Discipline does. And discipline doesn't care how you feel. Here's the truth nobody likes to hear. You don't accidentally become obsessed. You decide. You decide that being average is more painful than being uncomfortable. You decide that excuses are more exhausting than the work. You decide that sleep, balance, and comfort can wait. Everybody wants the results. Everybody wants the rings. Everybody wants to be remembered. But nobody wants to live the life that earns it. They want balance. They want to train hard, but not too hard. They want to win, but not sacrifice. They want success, but only if it fits nicely into their lifestyle. That's not greatness. That's negotiation. I didn't negotiate with my goals. I didn't ask my body how it felt. I didn't ask my friends what they thought. I didn't ask for permission. Because the moment you ask for permission, you've already decided to stop short. Let me make this uncomfortable for a second. You already know when you're lying to yourself. You know when you hit snooze. You know when you skip the workout. You know when you say, tomorrow, because today feels hard. You don't need motivation. You need honesty. Be honest. Are you tired? Or are you avoiding the work? Are you burned out? Or are you bored with being uncomfortable? Are you asking for balance? Or are you asking for an excuse? I wasn't special. I wasn't gifted with something mystical. What I had was clarity. I knew exactly what I wanted. And once you know that, everything else becomes noise. When you know what you want, there is no debate in the morning. The alarm goes off, and your feet hit the floor. Not because it's fun, not because it feels good, but because this is who you said you were going to be. This isn't about basketball. Basketball was just my arena. This is about commitment. This is about choosing something and deciding you will suffer for it willingly, because suffering with purpose is better than comfort without meaning. I didn't choose balance. I chose the work. I chose the routine. I chose the repetition. I chose to do the same boring things over and over again until boredom turned into mastery. And here's the part nobody warns you about. When you choose this, people will not understand you. They'll say you're obsessed. They'll say you're doing too much. They'll tell you to slow down. That's fine. They chose comfort. I chose this. And if you're listening to this right now, you already feel it. That pull, that quiet voice telling you there's more in you than the life you're currently living. The question isn't, can you do it? The question is, are you willing to stop asking for balance and start asking for greatness? People ask me all the time, how did you stay motivated? I didn't. That's the answer they don't like. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings are unreliable. They disappear when it's cold. They disappear when you're tired. They disappear when nobody's watching. Discipline doesn't disappear. I didn't train when I felt like it. I trained because it was on the schedule. I didn't shoot because I was inspired. I shot because it was time. Feelings didn't decide my effort. The standard did. Here's something you need to understand. If you only work when you feel good, you will always be average. Because greatness requires you to show up on the days you feel slow, the days you feel heavy, the days your mind is telling you to take it easy. Those days matter more than the good ones. Anybody can work hard. When energy is high, anybody can train. When confidence is flowing, but who are you? When everything in you wants to stop, that's who you really are. I built my life around repetition, not excitement, not variety. Repetition. The same moves, the same shots, the same footwork. Over and over and over again. Because excellence isn't created in intensity. It's created in consistency. Let me tell you something brutal. Your talent doesn't matter. If you can't repeat your effort, your potential doesn't matter. If your habits are weak and your dreams don't matter, if your routine doesn't support them, people love to romanticize greatness. They talk about confidence. They talk about mindset. They talk about belief. But belief is built after the work. Confidence is a side effect, not a prerequisite. You don't wait to feel ready. You work until ready is no longer a question. There were days my body hurt, days my legs were heavy, days my shots felt off, days my mind was tired, before practice even started. So what? That was never the point. The point was training my mind to obey. Because if your mind only listens when things are easy, you don't control it. It controls you. Discipline is freedom. The freedom to not negotiate with yourself. The freedom to not ask, should I? You already decided. And let's be honest, most people don't lack talent. They lack tolerance. Tolerance for boredom. Tolerance for discomfort. Tolerance for doing the same thing without applause. They quit, not because it's impossible, but because it's monotonous. I embraced that. I loved the days nobody clapped. I loved the empty gym, the quiet mornings, the loneliness, because that's where separation happens. While others were sleeping, I was sharpening. While others were relaxing, I was refining. Not to prove anything, but because this was the price. And you don't pay the price once. You pay it every day. There is no finish line where discipline stops. There is no moment where comfort takes over. The moment you relax your standards, someone else passes you. You want to know why most people burn out? Because they rely on emotion to fuel something that requires structure. Emotion fades. Structure stays. So, stop asking yourself how you feel. Start asking yourself what the standard is. And then, meet it. Again. And again. And again. Because this is how trust is built. Trust in yourself. Not with words. Not with affirmations. But with proof. And once you have that proof, once you've shown yourself, you do what you say you'll do. Confidence is inevitable. This isn't balance. This is alignment. Your actions matching your goals. And if they don't match, don't complain. Adjust. The work doesn't care how talented you think you are. It only responds to what you do when no one is watching. Nobody talks about this part. They talk about success, like it's a reward, like something you earn, and then get to enjoy with everyone around you. That's not how it works. Greatness costs you things. It costs you time you'll never get back. It costs you moments you don't get to attend. Birthdays, parties, weekends. While other people were bonding, I was working, not because I didn't care, but because I cared about something else more. This is where people quit. Not because the work is hard, but because the loneliness is loud. When you choose this path, you separate yourself. Not intentionally. It just happens. Your schedule doesn't match. Your priorities don't match. Your hunger doesn't match. So, conversations change. Invitations slow down. You become too intense, too serious, too much. That's fine. They're not wrong. Greatness requires imbalance, and imbalance creates distance. Let me be clear. If everyone understands you, you're not pushing far enough. If everyone agrees with your choices, your goals aren't big enough. And if nobody questions your lifestyle, you're probably living comfortably. I spent a lot of time alone, not because I wanted to be isolated, but because isolation was the environment where I could hear myself clearly. No noise, no opinions, no distractions, just the work. People love to say, don't sacrifice your life for success, but they don't tell you that doing nothing is also a sacrifice. You sacrifice potential. You sacrifice self-respect. You sacrifice the chance to see who you could have become. That's a price too. So choose your sacrifice. Either way, you're paying. I didn't resent the distance. I understood it. Because while others were living for today, I was building for tomorrow. And tomorrow doesn't belong to the distracted. There were nights when the silence was heavy, when I questioned if it was worth it. Not because I was weak, but because I was human. But I never questioned the mission. I questioned comfort. This is something you need to accept. If you want extraordinary results, you will live an ordinary social life, at least for a while. And that's not punishment. That's focus. Most people don't fail because they lack ability. They fail because they can't sit with discomfort long enough to let it transform them. They run back to familiarity, back to people, back to habits, back to noise. I stayed. I stayed when it was boring. I stayed when it was lonely. I stayed when nobody cared. Because I wasn't chasing applause. I was chasing mastery. And mastery demands silence. Silence from opinions. Silence from distractions. Silence. Here's the part you need to hear. If you feel misunderstood, you're not broken. If you feel alone on your path, you're not lost. You're just early. Every great journey feels isolating before it feels rewarding. And the ones who make it through aren't the strongest. They're the ones who can endure being alone with their purpose. You don't need everyone with you. You just need to not quit on yourself. At some point, you stop thinking about winning. Not because winning doesn't matter, but because something bigger replaces it. You realize this was never about trophies, never about applause, never about being seen. It was about becoming someone you could respect when nobody was watching. I didn't do this to impress people. I did this so I wouldn't disappoint myself. Legacy isn't what people say about you when you're gone. Legacy is what you build inside yourself while you're still here. The habits you form, the standards you live by, the promises you keep when it would be easier to break them. One day, the noise stops. The games end. The lights shut off. The crowd moves on. And all you're left with is the truth. Did you give everything to the thing you said mattered? Or did you negotiate until it felt comfortable? Because comfort doesn't leave a mark. Convenience doesn't change lives. And balance doesn't create legends. I chose this life, knowing it would cost me, knowing it would demand more than most people were willing to give, knowing it would ask me to walk alone at times, and I'd choose it again. Not because it was easy, but because it was honest. If you're listening to this and something inside you feels restless, that's not fear. That's truth knocking. You already know what you're supposed to be doing. You already know where you've been holding back. You already know the standard you've been avoiding. So don't ask for balance. Ask for alignment. Ask for discipline. Ask for the courage to choose the harder path. Because one day, you're going to look back at the life you lived. And the only thing that will matter is this: did you choose comfort, or did you choose who you were capable of becoming? I didn't choose balance. I chose this.